Hello to you all, and right now I will be continuing the analysis that I left uh, yesterday night. That was like I was supposed to be doing the number 9, but I did not do that, so I'm right now stuck with it. And let's just first of all let me explain the core insight that I found in the number 9. And to do that, let's just go over. So basically it's related to my way, right? uh, I have two ways to identify a pullback, right, or a weak high. Like after this breakout at this movement, how do you know that a small movement is not a full pullback, right? How do I not categorize this as a weak high? Then something like this happens. For that, I came with two rules. One is a location based FIB indicator, FIB tool, or Fibonacci retracement. The second would be using a structure shift, like something like this. So this whole would be an impulse, this would be a correction, this would be an impulse. For now, let me just show you how the FIB tool work. Basically, you go from the low to high in a bullish trend like this. What you want is you want the price to come around the 0.382 level, following like this. So that's a valid pullback. And like let's say at this moment something like this happens. So this would be an impulse and this would be a pullback, and then we have an impulse again. Basically, I think that summarizes the use of our tool. Alright, going over to the next explanation, which is like a very simple thing and just a bit complex than the normal version that I just showed you right at this moment. For example, let me just add this here and okay. So basically what happened, we had a 4-hour break of structure and then we have a 15-minute break of structure. So what that did was we had a 4-hour SL as stated here, then we had a 15-minute SL. Nothing crazy, but you do as always. Since you cannot wait for that structure shift, because the structure shift would need to like come all the way down here, break this and then go up. That is virtually a very distinct possibility that can happen, but is very rare. And since we know that a structure shift is not the only way to identify a pullback, what we did, we go by the low and then we go by the high. Since I already have this marked up right here, I will delete the one that we draw, and just when we see a mitigation, right, of our 0.382 level, just to say I do not mind if it's a wick or closing, I just want to see a mitigation. So basically you have a pullback right here. As it mitigates, I would say, hey there, this is my 4-hour week high and this is my 4-hour SL. So right now I have a range, right? I have a fully formed range. Well, that would summarize for this. And let me just now move on to the next. How does it look? Does it look far more complex than this one or this one? Because this is like a simple zigzag, right? Like this, and this, and then we have this which have one of these things, and then we go. This is, by the way, an internal structure, and then we have this crazy thing going on. Don't worry guys, the actual market looks even shittier than this, because right, you have like these small movements, like just how complicated this looks, but it is not as complicated as it may look, right? So basically for our 4-hour structure, that would simply be from this point to this, and then we have from here to, and then here, then we have a break of structure to the outside. That looks all sweet, right? Now first of all, first we will approach it with the structure shift, then we approach it with the Fibonacci, and then again we approach it with the Fibonacci, right? So with the structure shift, we have the internal structure going smoothly at this moment. Remember, for our structure shift, we want the internal structure to have a trend shift, and then we can say we had that correction. For now we are still trading that bullish internal structure. Up until this moment we saw very deep mitigation, but it did not break below this low. We go up, and finally at this moment of time, right, at this very moment of time, we see that we can see that good pullback, but let me just clear the chart in a bit and I'll show you. So basically, right, after like this breakout to the upside, we had a structure shift at this moment because we had a closing, right, like this. Now what that did for us, that just said, hey, we had an impulse at this moment, then we have a correction right here, or to actually look more convincing, you can use like red for the correction, then you say, hey, I have a confirmed correction for this. Now first, let me actually just clear it. Okay, that was structure shift. By the way, the structure shift, it is only sometimes this obvious, and like a lot of time it is more complex, and a person tend to even fake it and it's hard to notice. So we use mostly FIB tool, right? So basically by using our structure shift method, we figured up until from this moment to this moment we had a impulse, and then from here to here we confirmed that we were in a period of correction, right? That correction lasted till this moment, and then we went over to like go in a period of impulse again. But now let's say you use a FIB tool. So if we use our FIB retracement, the one here, what do you think will happen? Let's say John, like if I can just build this guy, wait a minute. Okay, I think it looks fine. Never mind, I can't. So let's say a guy walks over to me and say, this is not so difficult, I just put one here and the one here, and it doesn't really make any difference, right? I had a pullback, even if it lasted this, it did not break my strong low, so we are all set. That's normally a bit dumb response. Now some smart people, at least I am not smart. Wait, did I just say small instead of smart? Well, sorry. I meant to say some smart people may notice, which I was not because I took this long to notice this obvious flaw. So what they did after this breakout, they start looking for a pullback, right? They say, hey, this is also a point from where I can see, and they pin it here, and what they see is that it did not reach this area, so they say it's fine. Then they go over to the next, and then they see it, then they see price coming down to their range of interest or the below the 0.382 level. So what that does is like, let me go over here and explain, right? This is a bit, so what that does, right, after this period of impulse, according to the FIB tool, right, according to this tool, after this period of impulse we had a period of correction right here. I say okay, so we have a 4-hour week high at this point and we see a 4-hour week high, but basically due to the fact, because it was also a 50-minute structure, right, like this. So we now have a overlapping 15-minute structure. Now it is preference based. Some people like to stick with the overlapping structure, like they will just keep the overlapping structure. Some people may notice another internal structure in this structure and just say, hey, this is my overlap 15-minute structure now, and I am the second type. So after this we had that pullback for 4, then we had a 4-hour breakout structure. Okay, you say okay, fine, what changed? Then you say you have why, right? Then your 4-hour structure fails, right? Because this should be a strong low while this should be a weak high. But then you say like a trend cannot always be bullish, it has to return to bearishness. You say okay, then you have a pullback, it goes in your expected direction, then it again flares up and go all the way up, again going against your strong high at this moment. Now basically you become a little smarter and you notice that, like in the previous section, that the actual impulse was from here to here, and then you let me actually just, the actual impulse was from this low point to this high point. Then you saw a pullback because it did not, then your strong low was this and weak high was this. It actually followed your direction. The structure that you said was 4-hour, the structure that you said was 4-hour was just 15-minute structure. You became smart. Congratulations. So now you are confused. Wait, what should I do then? Like, how should I know that this was fake, right? How should I calculate, like how should I calculate this, right? How should I not calculate this area, right? Both make sense. How should I do that? For this specific problem, first of all, I am actually recording it for this specific problem, and truthfully I do not have the full solution, and I don't really have the full solution yet. But what my understanding allowed me to come to realize was just simply the one thing that you can do, you can like use the FIB tool only when like your structure, right, your internal structure is below the 4R 15 4R, right, 4R break of structure. Like if it is like this, if it is like this, you can just ignore it. Or what you can do is you can be conscious of the fact when this particular setup presents in the market, that you focus more on the internal structure shift, right, like here, instead of using your FIB tool like here to just be over smart. And when you notice that you have used your FIB tool wrongly, you can actually just correct it for your future buyers. This actually let me just show you. You might think that it might not be that big of an issue, and I personally had a misconception that the price can just automatically fix it, right? Like let's say, even if I was wrong at this moment, like after this breakout, price did fix itself, right? We have the same range next. But what could happen is, like at this moment, after you had this for a break of structure and price have this again for a break of structure, if it did something like this, right, if it is something like this, you will again calculate your FIB tool here and get it in the range that will lead you to this, and then you can just like continue that, missing the entire correct range. And there is also some complication, like you can have a 1 day break of structure that could lead you to determining 1 day internal structure shift. For that would be a 1 day pullback, and if it does something like this and then this, then your 1 day bias is ruined. And this particular situation is what the number 9 is about. I think I have mentioned a lot of it. Let me just do a small recap. Right, so to avoid this problem, you can focus just on the internal structure. Below the break of structure, or the below the break, actually to just describe it in the term of this diagram, you can just focus on the internal structure that is formed before the break of structure, before our 4 break of structure, which is this, right? Or you can just avoid using your FIB tool if you see the internal structure up after the break of structure. That is also an option. The second can be, you can be conscious of this particular setup, right? You can notice that your internal structure is still going on even if you have used FIB retracement wrongly, and even if you sometime like misuse it, right, you cannot be aware that you are wrong all the time. Like let's say you misuse it at this moment, but when you see this internal structure shift, right, at this moment, you can fix your range by doing something like this, and understanding that the pullback that you measured around at this moment was the wrong pullback. That is also a smart move. I'm a kinda let me drink some water, and then I come back and load the number 9 problem, and then we actually see the live issue. And honestly, I'm a bit worried if I am being recorded because the video has already been on 19 minutes. Alright, so I am back, and right now you guys actually can take a break because I had to set it up, and right now we are to focus on our number 9, and I would be explaining it what happened and all that stuff. Let me actually explain the origin of, how do you say that, origin, I mean this one, right? Origin, I don't know how to say, pronounce it, but basically the source of number 9 was this Notion database. If you can see, number 9 pair GBP/USD, date, and that the data was collected from date from, right, it was collected from date May 26 to 29. By the way, this was the time that the pullback lasted from its highest to lowest point, and this is the pips count, and this is my analysis on it. I will come back to it, and I did actually mention it that I'm a bit worried about it. By the way, this worried and the next, these two problems are just the byproduct of this one problem. What did I write? Oh, I wrote a pure rant. Let me actually read it up. The pullback itself is okay. However, the thing is, this specific pullback introduced a forward structure shift going a bit in future that would lead to a one-day pullback, which truthfully is a fake one-day pullback. So I actually ignore this certain area due to its special nature. It also has that FIB level special condition. By the way, the special condition is the one that we just discussed, which actually was wrong this time around, but that is another thing, blah blah blah, whatever. Well, basically I have shared the source, so let's just continue. So far, whatever is this is the point that the number 9 is talking about. So basically, on the daily chart, we had this, right, and this is, by the way, this should be very familiar, right, because this is actually just this, like you can start from here and then all the way up, down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, right? This is just like this, or the bullish trend. We had a break of structure here like this, then we wait for a pullback. We got our pullback, which was a forward structure shift, and then this was followed by another pullback with the closing being around here. I just kept it at a distance because it would get messy, right? Now at this moment, from this point, it is good, right? Nothing actually changes and you have a pullback, and according to our analysis, it is fine to check a pullback as long as it is in that range of or whatever. Basically, it does not make complexity that much harder to figure out, and it possibly even has a internal structure shift around at this moment of time, and it satisfies our 0.382 rule. By the way, this is the same thing, 38.2%, and then at this moment is where the complication ended, right? First of all, you have like this. Okay, this satisfies it. First, let me show you. If you go by this rule, what happens? You say, okay, I see this. Let me actually go over to the FOA, right? You say fine. You say fine. This is a pullback. I admit it, and you say you agree with this break of structure, and then a break of structure to the downside happened. What happened? What happened was a 4-hour structure shift, and that happened after this daily break of structure. Alright, a 4-hour structure shift happened after this daily break of structure. What that did, focus on this, alright. What that did, that meant that this was a daily pullback. Now let me just ask a simple question. Does the scale of that comes anywhere near this or this? I have to zoom in to just see that daily pullback, right? Like let's say this is your daily pullback, so after that breakout, this became that one day, and then this again became that one day. Okay, fine. Then we had this pullback, then we had this break of structure, and then we have a one day push. Then again we have a break of, then we have a one day. Now we are in this one day range, but basically look how it ruined around this much of our time or our our correct analysis, because what it actually is, after this breakout, right, after this breakout, if you ignore this fake structure shift, you can just normally see that this was the whole pullback followed by this break of structure. Well, at the end of the day, it did actually fix itself like such, right? We got the same thing, but it still did damage to us, because after this we had this pullback and then we had this breakout. So basically there was a lot of damages, and I might be forgetting some things right now, because I am sure there was more to the story, but let's just focus on our complexity or our number 9 problem itself. What happened actually was, so basically our external points are this for now, but the actual points are something like this. We had a internal structures right at this moment, like here, and then we have here, then we have here, then we have here. Now if I take it out, you can just see that the internal structure is going on. Only here we had our internal structure, but what we did was we put our high low here and then we put it here. Now let me just show you guys that what we did is very similar to what happened around at this moment, where we put our FIB tool right here and measured it in advance. Then we had an actual structure shift. I have a better example for this actually. Yeah, so basically this is our main structure. At this moment we had a breakout structure, but our internal structure is still going on right here, and only here did we have that confirmed structure shift. but what actually happened, we assumed, and according to our FIB rules, this was the correct structure, the correct 15-minute, oh my bad, this was the correct for a pullback according to our FIB levels. That is what led me to be a bit, that is what led me pondering this tricky area, or this tricky way my FIB approach worked, right? Because what we essentially did was similar to what happened here, and what it led to was like a lot of complications, because if we follow the route that was the structure shift, what would happen, we had this move of impulse, the impulse will be noted in yellow, then we had this pullback for our daily. It is fine right now, alright, and then we have that impulse again that led to that break of structure. But if you consider this your daily, right, if you consider this your daily, then that would lead to a lot of complications. Like then you would have this, like you can have your 4 structure stuck in here, and then you would have this 4 structure stuck, and a lot more confusing stuff. But basically I arrived here because let me actually summarize this. I think I'm going a bit too deeper, that is making it appear more complicated than it actually is. Turn it off, and this is the actual thing, right? We had a pullback, we had a break of structure, we had a pullback, and since this actually happened, you can just see, if you treat it just similar to that example, none of this law is violated, but our FIB tool confirmed that this was a valid pullback that costed us our at least a month or two, like 2 or 3 months of our buyers. And then finally, if we go with the structure shift, we know that this all was an impulse and this was the actual pullback, and that is what we discussed in all these scenarios, that at this moment your FIB tool may say, hey, this is the pullback, while it actually is just a fake indication, and then you have this actual pullback, right? That could lead to a lot more complications than one can expect or simulate. Like I cannot think of many possibilities right now, but I am sure even one of these possibility is very annoying things to have, when you could have a correct structure like such. For now, be aware of this particular situation. Crime patrol will crime patrol will always be with you, and I am a bit sleepy, so yes, that was all for the number 9 situation. Tata, bye bye. But let me close it all down. Okay, we have this, then we have this right here, we can go close it, then we will be having this right here. Should we close it? Well, the video has been pretty long, so it is in our best interests that we stop the video.